I'm live. I'm reading out of Life as Carola. It is one of Joan Grant's farm memories. It plays, she was born in 1510 on the 4th of May. She's now about 7. And this is the story of a girl who was the illegitimate daughter of a Lord Griffin. She was born in that castle, and they have to leave it because Carola's grandmother, or Orlando's mother, doesn't want them anywhere near the house. So they are now out on the streets. Prelude for strings. This is the 4th chapter. I decided not to tell Mother what had happened until I had talked it over with Donnelly. She was in the cellar, pounding butter in a wooden churn. And when I told her everything, even about losing my temper and being so rude, she said, "I know the woman who lives in the house of the Magnolias, an ill-bred, pretentious strumpet, who is not fit to mend your mother's shoes. Even the old man who keeps her for his amusement doesn't trust her. That's why he sends his steward on this pretext of looking after her servants. He is really a spy to see that none of the money is being spent on the favours of young gallants. Can you think of any way I could persuade people to let Mother work for them?" "If I could, my little one, I'd have done it already. My husband used to keep a stall in the market where he could sold the produce of his farmer brother before we saved enough to buy this wine shop. I used to take the fruit and vegetables round to many of the big houses, and I became quite friendly with some of the kitchen servants, though some of the others thought that just because they wore livery they were blood brothers to dukes. I have been round to see all of them who I thought might remember me, but it didn't matter what story I told, I couldn't get any work for her. It was always the same answer. What has she got to show us? Perhaps if she could bring her work here once, one of the upper servants might deign to bring it to the notice of the mistress of the house." When I told them she had no embroideries to show, they just laughed at me and said they wouldn't even buy a cabbage before they'd seen it, or a basket of berries until they had tipped them out to see if the fruit under the top layer wasn't rotten. "Isn't there anyone," I said, "who would give her a bit of velvet, even the skirt of an old dress, or some silk that have got into a tangle which most people are too impatient to unravel? I could smooth them out. I'm very good at knots, even little ones that have been there for a long time. If I were a rich woman, or could find where my husband keeps his savings, she should never lack materials. Grigori is a good man in many ways, as mild as an ox and nearly as stupid. But the goddess of generosity never stood by his cradle. If he had not got drunk one night and so forgotten to take the money from me after a fiesta, I shouldn't even have been able to buy new knee boots for my sons to wear to the wars. Sometimes when few people want food with their wine, I can sell a cheese of my own making without his noticing. But he is a difficult man to live with. Perhaps men are only born into the world to teach women patience. Who teaches them, I have never discovered." This gave me an idea, and I said, "Sometimes after a market day, the men who stop here to play dice have a full purse of money. They don't seem to mind losing it to each other, so it can't have been hard to earn. Do you think it would matter if I took just a little of it? I'd only take from people I didn't like. The cross-eyed caner who goads his oxen, or the tanner who is always shouting at his wife." "Your mother would rather starve in the gutter. Yes, even this gutter, dirty as it is, than have you turn thief to help her. Thieving is a sure way to the gallows. Do you want to lose a hand or have an ear lopped off? Anyway, I couldn't allow it. If you did it anywhere else, you might be caught and break your mother's heart, and mine into the bargain. And if you did it in my house, it would give it a bad name. I may only be the wife of the keeper of a wine shop, as my cousin who married the landlord of the Golden Bantam never tires of telling me, but at least a man can drink himself insensible on my wine, and not wake up to find his throat cut, or his pockets even emptier than before he spewed, which is more than she can say, even if she has sometimes got four travelling coaches standing in her stable yard at the same time, and every one of them with a coat of arms on the panel. Are the things Mother would need to work with very costly? I have heard that velvet out of Genoa is sometimes 2 gold pieces the span, and they give silver for a hank of embroidery silk, so small that you could hide it in your fist. And the gold thread and the jewels? It would need a scholar to count their cost, and Caspari, the silversmith, to know their value. As I went up the cellar steps, I heard the sound of a lute, very soft and far away, as if it were only memory brushing the strings. It came from our room, and while I stood listening outside the door, the music grew louder, as if the strings had persuaded my mother's fingers to pluck them more strongly. The harmonics lamented, as if the lute were tuned to sorrow, and then she began to sing the same song that I'd heard on the night that my father returned to her. A nightingale is singing in the wood where nymphs are dancing in a silver glade. A white hind watches them, startled yet not afraid to see them weave enchantments. At dawn they vanished, yet their spells remain, and when 2 mortal lovers tread the grass, their feet have trod, their hearts shall be enthralled, each unto each, so that they beat as one until they die and join the happy ghosts. The song broke off, and I opened the door so that she shouldn't have time to cry by herself. She smiled and asked me if I'd had a happy day. I said that I had been outside the town, playing with some children, and had forgotten how far the sun had travelled. I picked up the lute and said how I had missed hearing her play it. I asked her to play the songs that were my favourites, gay songs that the vine-pickers sing, and songs that would make even a one-legged man begin to dance. Suddenly the door was flung open, and there was Donnelly, her arms covered in flour, holding a twist of baking dough in her hand. Here, have I been calling on the saints to give you work as an embroideress, and you can sing to a lute sweeter than I've ever heard. You have only to sing songs like that in the front room, and all the customers will be pouring out of the grandest inns in the town to come and listen to you. Why, even the coaches will stop here. I must tell Grigori to order 10 more barrels of wine before next market day, or there will be gold thrown on the tables and no wine to sink it in. And that was how my years as a strolling player began. I stop here because the next one is chapter 5. It is Tuesday.